we had a body of work that we came up with, and it deserves some context of how we got there. And when you talk about modernization and finance on the same committee, you've got some things you got to work out. But the basic context that we had was, the world is changing at this rapid pace. It changes daily, and those changes revolutionize the workplace and that schools have to prepare their students for. And our approach to addressing system-wide modernization and finance aligns to drivers of system reform that are suggested by Michael Fullen. And he's a well-respected researcher, and he's an author on educational reform. And those drivers include capacity building, group work or teamwork, instructional improvement, and systemic solutions. So everything we've done it kind of fits back into those molds. Our recommendation development followed a format from the educational reforms of Ontario, Canada. So, and with that, we recognize that a transformative educational system has to be ready to respond, embrace, and encourage an attitude of innovation by one, using modern tools of technologies that adds functionalities and potentials not thought possible. Two, developing and implementing updated systemic structures aimed at supporting those drivers. And three, enabling and supporting teachers who are well educated and skilled in use of current methodologies for instructional excellence. We believe that our committee's three recommendations, which are personalization of learning, systemic collaboration, and enabling resources, and the accompanying action plans that go along with them, which further define the recommendations, because these are pretty big terms, right? That those things will lead to a culture of innovation and ensure excellent education for every student every day. So let's see if I can do this right. We're going to have three different people come up and talk about those recommendations. The first person that's going to be coming up is Karen Gaborik, who is Superintendent of Fairbanks School District. And Karen, I'll turn it over to you, okay? Here's the little, I don't know if you'll need
You want to run that one?
I can.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, thank you. Karen Gaborik, Superintendent in Fairbanks and new president of the Alaska Superintendents Association. So happy to fill that role. This this goal is near and dear to my heart. And so you can see right there, the recommendation is establish a systemic foundation for personalized learning and consistent excellence. And you heard the word systemic, I think, really start to bubble up in that last presentation. I think that's key. And my personal comment on that would be that systemic change, like I'm attempting to accomplish in Fairbanks, others, and that now we're looking at a statewide level, it requires strong leadership at the top, mostly to facilitate the process so you get the kind of buy-in that, we're talking about, so that grassroots buy-in. So I would say, there's this two-tiered approach to accomplishing systemic change, and not, I'm feeling my way through that right now, but that is my takeaway from what's going on in Fairbanks. So in terms of personalized learning, the definition, you'll see there's some overlaps with the first committee, student learning, lots of overlap here, and that, of course, makes perfect sense. But personalized learning is student-centered learning. And it's where the system, where the teachers, where schools adapt to student needs, basically. And it's also about meaningful contact between students and teachers. You heard a lot about equity of access in that first presentation. That's also a key piece here. And then also in ours, mastery of standards. And so, you start talking about skills-based, a skills-based approach to education, competency-based learning, that sort of thing. So technology is definitely a piece of personalized learning, and it's because the world is changing. The world changes every day for all of us, and technology is a huge reason why. And in many cases, again, and I realize there's this broad spectrum in Alaska, but in many cases we have ubiquitous access to technology. It's changing the workplace, it's changing education, and it's changing, it's providing so many more options to teachers in terms of how we can deliver education to kids. So as the world changes, however, too often our schools are not changing. And an example that I've been using in Fairbanks is that this year's kindergartners are going to graduate in the year 2030. And we really have to focus on giving those kids what they need to be ready, after they graduate from our systems, to be ready for the workplace. And we really, it's a cliche almost, but we probably can't imagine it. We have to really focus on what they need. And we have to leverage technology to do that well. So we need to leverage technology in terms of there's so much content available. It is not just about the teacher anymore. There's so much content available. It's about facilitation of getting kids to the right content, but also using technology to get at real-time assessment. And so not assessment 2 weeks later, not these big summative tests, that's a piece of it, but in the classroom, real-time assessment so that you can target instruction to those student learning needs. And that is a key piece of personalization. Let's see. Consistent accountability and quality control is another big piece of this in terms of addressing our achievement gaps and underperformance. And again, I think the State Board of Education has already taken a really important step in this direction in terms of establishing that 9th grade math test as Algebra 1 and talking about end-of-course exams. I think that is really going to, in a way, level the playing field statewide. It's going to set the bar, and it's going to provide consistency across the state that I think will be key. So those are the highlights of the personalized learning goal.
So the next goal we had was the goal of enabling resources, and Luke Fulp from the Mat-Su School District, representing the Alaska School Business Officials Association, or close enough, right? Yep. Go, Luke.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to present kind of this goal here today, and I like others, it was a real privilege to work with this group and come up with the thoughts around what Lieutenant Governor Byron Malott said earlier. It's elephant in the room with finances in particular. We refer to that as resources. We refer to it as more all-inclusive, enabling resources. And we discussed this as a large group quite extensively. Where does this fit into the conversation with modernization and moving us forward? And I think that one of the things that we eventually got to with this whole finance discussion is it really shouldn't lead. It should be be a backdrop to the conversation and allow us to move forward with what is it that our education system needs, what is it that our students need, how do we move forward and progress our education, and then our finances and our funding structure should come in and support things. So that's why we came up with the term enabling resources. It really is intended to enable what it is that the folks in this room see as necessary for our students. The first thing that we talked about was not only should it be enabling, but we should extend this the conversation. We started with sustainable finance or enabling finance, and we said it should be resources. Let's make it all inclusive. It includes expertise that we currently have within the system, and really all assets that we have, pulling those together to do whatever we can with students. We know that we can't change the economic situation here in the state on our own or have that impact. So we need to do whatever we can with the resources we have available to us and try to pool those together in a way that can move us forward. So we talked about sharing expertise and any other assets and resources that districts have independently to aid in collaboration. The other thing that we cited was Augenblick, Palick, and Associates conducted a review of the foundation formula for this commissioned by the state legislature in 2015. And within their study, they said a strong funding system is equitable, responsive, adequate, efficient, and flexible. We added the term predictable, and we put that number 1. So we took APA's definition for a strong funding system, and we said it also needs to be predictable. A big part of that was part of the group that I represented on the committee was the Alaska Association of School Business Officials. I went back to them throughout the process and filled them in on what it is that we were discussing. And I told them we were looking for transformational change. And they said a sustainable or predictable model would be transformational. We understand we've been talking about that for 30 years, but making that predictable for school districts so it's not a year to year, dependent on one-time money, all the uncertainty that goes along with that. It's really debilitating in terms of moving initiatives forward and trying to make an impact in a way that you can ensure that it sticks around year after year. So we want to make sure that whatever the state comes up with is predictable. And then lastly, we didn't want to be overly prescriptive on any foundation formula changes. We really want to leave that to the experts. We want economic analysis, independent economic analysis, to drive the conversation. We want the funding system to work for all school districts, and we know that in order to do that, we really can't pick apart the foundation formula. It was a lot of thought and deliberate process went into building it, and if we're going to do an overhaul of that formula, we want a similar process to follow where we would bring in an independent economic consulting firm or analysis to drive what should those changes be. So while a foundation formula review could be necessary, given the different modernization and systemic collaboration things that we're pushing statewide, we really think that that should be done by an outside party. And then lastly, our 8 action steps. We think that whatever the case may be, I think a lot of the conversation that occurred within our committee really led to efficiencies. It wasn't as though we were looking to save money through the conversation or dialogue, but I think a lot of the ideas that are born out of modernization and systemic collaboration lead to efficiency. So we think whatever the case may be, that there could be a result of looking at the way we're doing things in the future as being economical or saving the state some money in the long term. So that could be through distance delivery courses, and these kind of tie into our 8 action steps. Distance delivery courses for students, increasing course offerings, digital repositories for teachers, sharing administrative services amongst districts, professional administrative services, and then lastly, coordinating professional development opportunities. So there was a lot discussed, but that's kind of the gist of where we're at with finance. Thanks.
And then presenting our third recommendations is Edward Alexander, the Education Manager for Tanana Chiefs.
All right. Trin Gwinzi, Shoji Edward Alexander Oji. Gucha Jeg Watson Easley, so Tanana Chiefs Genjik Gucha Tugwalton. Gechuatan Easley Chun. It's Trinan Do Shi'i. I have 4 children. So I'm also not only an educator, I also am a parent of 4 children, 2 of whom are in Karen's district, the North Star Borough School District. In anticipation of next week's Indigenous Peoples Day, I wanted to start off by saying Dinji Zhuhtrin Shoncha, which is Happy Indigenous Peoples Day in Gwich'in. I'm from the community of Fort Yukon. Under systemic collaboration, we really wrestled with some of the definitions. We wrestled with the words. We talked a lot. We learned a lot. We talked about the different perspectives of the group here and learned a lot about each other, about different priorities coming from different stakeholder groups from around the state. And I think we came up with some good recommendations, and we'll go over those here. So our goal here is to facilitate deep systemic collaboration and alignment to ensure systemic efficiency, effectiveness, and innovation. And so we first had to struggle with the definition. What is this systemic collaboration that we're talking about? And this is what we came up with. School districts, educational agencies, private industry, tribal organizations, parents, students, and other stakeholder groups sharing expertise, ideas, best practices, and resources with the goal of improving efficiency, enhancing opportunities, and increasing innovation for the success of all Alaskan students. I wanted to give you guys a moment there to read that first point there, the first sentence there on why we need this. So essentially, the education system in our communities are already collaborating in a lot of different ways. We know this. And so we were very intentional in all of our discussions not to hinder all of the good things that are already occurring, but to empower and enhance the important work that's occurring right now at the classroom level across the state already. If you take a look at the second point there on efficiencies and new opportunities in areas of common business operations, I'll give you a second to read that. Essentially, we're aware of the challenges that students, educators, and communities face with time constraints, increasing demand and responsibilities, and decreasing resources. In examining and forming recommendations for systemic collaboration, we were mindful of empowering all stakeholder groups, from district to district sharing, to teacher collaboration, to empowering community groups and business entities, to tribes, to actively support parents and students. Systemic collaboration is the great unifier because it helps to inform how all the other recommendations will work together efficiently, effectively, and importantly, with innovation as the underlying and empowering mindset for all of us. If you take a look at the third portion down there, where it starts off with systemic, I'll give you a second to read that, some of our thoughts on that. We're essentially opening the doors a bit wider in all of our 54 school districts and hundreds of schools to actively collaborate. Modernization and systemic collaboration doesn't just mean plugging some new device in. It's about utilizing and examining the information that we have now to adjust how we think about learning and how we think about our communities. It's not only our tools that need modernization. It's sometimes our underlying assumptions and how we work together as a community. I know that our group is excited about all of the many action steps we carefully crafted to inform the discussion on systemic collaboration, from the multitude of perspectives and experiences that came to the table voicing educated and experienced concerns from across Alaska on this topic. Fortunately, we don't have the time to go through all of those 20 different recommendations today, as much as we would like to have gone through them all. But I did want to take a moment to say thank you to all of the participants in this working group, in Modernization and Finance, and to all of the participants here in the other working groups, and to all of the teachers and educators across the state and involved in this work of critical concern to us all. Thank you. Masik Cho.
Do we have that handheld mic somewhere? That'd be good. So I guess now's the time to open it up for some questions. If you have any questions for us.
Thank you. Where can we find the proposed action items on the website then?
I'm going to refer that to my deed people, which I might say we want to really thank Sam Jordan and Mindy Lobaugh for all the help that they gave this committee. Really super.
This is Erin with the department. The action steps are not posted yet. We need to work through with the state board tomorrow how we start to disseminate this information, but we'll make sure that it gets out here very shortly after the conference once the state board meets tomorrow, which I encourage all of you to attend or listen to if you are able. So thank you.
Thanks, Erin. Deb, why don't we, if it's okay with you, committee, it would be nice for each one of you, and since James is sitting in the front and shrugging right now, I think we should start with him, to just say a word about just whatever. Yeah, whatever.
I can say whatever, fine.
Yeah, there you go. I knew he would, too.
The biggest thing, and I think that when at the superintendent's conference, the question came up, how do you define transformation? And a lot of especially I would say at this priority, there's a lot of pockets in the state that are already doing a lot of these things. It's a matter of taking that and transforming it across the whole state. And so that's what I see as transformational, taking those ideas, taking what's working, having them collaborate with other districts and other organizations, and have it work across the state. And then, you know, when we talk about each district will look different, they'll look different, but they'll also have some of the similarities, hopefully, when they start working together and trying to get, you know, 54 districts, and inside of those districts, a bunch of communities all going in the same direction, increasing student learning. I mean, that's really the goal here, is in every one of these priorities, is how do we increase student learning across the whole system? And that's a trick. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy, and that's why it takes all of us to stay involved and stay engaged and help. And how can we get there? Thinking outside the box, all that stuff. So this is a critical priority. Every single one of the 5 priorities is critical, and they're going to all interlink. I can see that already. So thank you.
And I would just add, you know, that, what's that? Stand up? Okay. I would just add that, you know, that systemic collaboration that Ed was speaking of, I see real power in a regional approach to that. And, you know, interior superintendents have been, meeting and talking about how can we share resources and how can we work more efficiently. And I think those are important conversations. And then it's important for districts like Fairbanks that do have some capacity to share and also help build capacity and carry the bill on some of these things. I mean, I truly believe that. You know, what can I do to support a digital repository, that everybody else can have access to for a reasonable price? So I think that kind of thinking needs to happen.
I think what's transformational in this group, thinking about modernization, is number one, when we talked about finances and then changed it to resources, assets, expertise, et cetera, not just dollars, and then could have got ourselves bogged down in the conversation about, well, do we need to have inflation proofing in the formula and other kinds of things like that? And we decided we didn't want to go there. We wanted to say, what are the things we can agree on? What are the things that don't divide us, but the things that we can all get behind? And that's just one example in the finance section. This deep collaboration, if we're really able to do it, that is transformational. Anybody who read the McKinsey report and then Michael Fullen's work relative to how you do this sort of work, it is by getting people focused on the same goal and then allowing the practitioners at the grassroots level, teachers and administrators, to craft how it goes and to make change over time by correcting and getting rid of the things that don't work and adding in things that do work, and not at this level, kind of the governance level, making those decisions, but rather enabling that collaboration is how we could really get our system focused in the right direction. And then finally, with personalization for students, so that then it's nimble and flexible and open and enabling for kids. Those are really powerful, transformational ideas, and so I was really pleased to be part of the committee.
Thanks, Sue. Katrina, maybe if you could say your name and where you're from, that'd be good.
Sure. My name is Katrina Church-Chmielowski, and I serve on the Copper River School District School Board. I am a product of Alaskan schools. I have 3 children, one who just graduated. And so the student-centered, personalized learning is something that I'm really passionate about, because I can look at my 3 children, I can look at Tiffany's Wolf, I can look at Lee's children and know that systemically, then we are going to have these opportunities throughout the state, and they're all our kids. So when I look and visit different classrooms in different communities, it means so much to me to know that we're all working collaboratively, and we're working with businesses, and we're working with tribes, and we're working with other organizations to really make this better for all of our kids. And so that's what I'm really passionate about.
Thank you. I'm Tim Navarro. I'm on the Kenai City Council. I'm actually a representative from Alaska Municipal League, but I also sit on the Kenai School Board also. So that's one of the reasons the AML asked me to be one of the representatives when this group was put together. And so it's an honor for me to do that, and it's been an honor to serve with all of you and those that got stuck in Juneau and elsewhere. I'm gonna simplify this a little bit, only because I'm big on my finance and I had to give up some things and go back and forth. But you know, what's happened over the last half a year is amazing, because now you can take what's there and put it to action. And when you have the governor, when you have the commissioner, when you have the Department of Education, and all the people from around the state that came together to do this, just like I was on the borough assembly and I had to fund our school district. It wasn't my job to second guess them, to ask them how they're going to do their job or how they're going to do it. The legislature should feel very comfortable now that there's a plan and an action that they can fund without asking a bunch of questions as, have you done your homework? Have you done this? Have you done that? It's time to stop talking about cuts to education. And just like we did here, we went back and just give us the funding, give us the predictability, and you'll see things happen. And if you don't believe that, look at what's happened over the last and I have to give again the Department of Ed staff, look at their expertise of putting all this together and bringing us together. So let's take this action and make it happen. And I'm not ready to give up after today. I'm ready to take this plan no matter what the Board of Education decides which ones to move on first. But we have to get behind them and move it, and I hope our legislature does the same thing. Thank you.
You heard a bit from me already. I guess beyond all of these things that we're talking about here, I think something important can often go unstated, and that's I guess in Gwich'in, you know, we always say, we start off whenever we're talking to each other, we say Shalak Nai, which means all my relations, right? All my relatives. And like when we talk about systemic collaboration and all the different goals and all, you know, personalized learning and educator excellence and so forth, I just want to encourage everybody here to really reach out and form those relationships with young people, with students who need you. They need your mentorship. They need to be talked to. Nobody's born with infused knowledge. They don't know your thoughts. And you know, going out and bridging that gap, I think is just such an important part of what we do. And that, like, as a personalized way to systemically collaborate, I think is such a key thing. And it's something that each of us can really do intentionally. And is appreciated. It's very meaningful. It could be the most meaningful thing that you find yourself actually doing. So for that, thank you.
I'm Tammy Van Wy. I'm Superintendent of Copper River School District, and what an honor it was to serve on this committee with so many very, very smart people. As the superintendent in a small rural school district, I am especially interested in modernization because contemporary technologies and innovations are what allow the kids in Copper River to access opportunities that 10 years ago they simply did not have. And it's not just modernization in terms of technology, it's innovation in terms of thought and thinking differently and recognizing that schools today still often do look the way they looked when those of us in this room were in school, but they don't have to, and quite honestly, they shouldn't, because the tools exist for us to provide students with so many more opportunities than they would get if they're sitting in rows in a single classroom with only the teacher in the front of the room providing them with the instruction and the information, the coursework, the opportunities, and so on. You know, we, in this committee as well, we pretty quickly got bogged down during our very first face-to-face meeting in bandwidth. And oh my goodness, you know, not everyone has equity and access, and that's true. But we cannot let that stop us from envisioning what the future can look like for students across Alaska, especially in rural Alaskan places where they're in very tiny schools. I want the students in Slana School in my district with 4 high school students to have just as many opportunities as a student attending Service High School here in Anchorage. The tools exist for us to be able to do that by sharing and working systemically and collaborating and setting aside district to district competition oftentimes and recognizing that we're better together and we can do more for the students in this state if we work together. What we will be able to do for the kids in Alaska is, I mean, that's what's transformational. Innovation can happen in a pocket and that's cool, but when innovation is happening everywhere and every student in our state benefits, we know we will have arrived and we're on our way. So thanks for this opportunity.
Hi. First of all, I want to thank everybody. This has been a great effort. And I want to shout out to our commissioner because I think and the board, they've set a great tone for how we have begun this process and very thoughtful and greatly appreciated. I think the commissioner had asked each of us to say, what did we find transformational or why was this transformational? And to me, what was transformational about this is if you look at what the commissioner had up in his PowerPoint earlier and what was transformation in the 70s and 80s and 90s, I think you would see it was tools they were trying to do, it was facilities, buildings, it was everything surrounding, but it said very little about the student. And to me, the biggest transformation that's coming out of this group and other groups is bringing it back to the student. And I think we have a great opportunity here in this state. We have some great leadership, and we have some wonderful pockets, as you found, that are very innovative, that have already started this process. And so with this collaboration, and collaboration is beyond just the structure of groups and organizations, it should be grassroots. It should be not your organization, but maybe the teacher, the parent, the child, and most importantly, the child. And I think we've getting close to that.
Hello. I'm Lee Butterfield. I teach at South Anchorage High School, and I have 3 daughters in ASD. I have a 7th grade daughter, a 1st grade daughter, and a kindergarten daughter. What we're doing in here matters not only to me in my job every single day, but also to what happens with my children over the next 12, 13 odd years. It directly impacts me. And both metaphorically and physically, if everyone else were standing, you'd see I am a hobbit among giants. I'm standing in front of a room full of people that intimidate me like you would not believe. There's only one group that has less power in this room than me as a teacher, and that's often our students. We talk a lot about student-centered pieces, and these all sound great, and everyone's heard this because you've been in these committees where we've all been like, yeah, this is awesome, this is great, we're going to change the world, and it's going to go in and it's going to get funneled, and then we're going to do all that great stuff that happens up above, and then it's going to hit this giant wall of logistics and bureaucracy, and it's going to be a grinding fight to make anything actually happen. And everyone in here, I think, knows that. I mean, we're starting to drift into other places. We're thinking about other emails and other things happening. And we have to remember every single step of the way. I've been a soldier my whole life. I was in the infantry for 10 years before this job, which is why I don't get stressed out at school. Teenagers aren't shooting at me, right? But it doesn't change the fact that all of us as adults suffer from this same problem that we blame our kids for. We have short attention spans, and something else is going to be shiny on the side, and we're going to chase it for a little while, and it's going to get us off task. And when we hit that wall and it starts grinding, I know everyone in here has the best intentions, and I've seen best intentions for years and years. I want to see some sweat behind it when we get there. That's it.
For somebody that was intimidated, he did a pretty darn good job. So, I'm Rick Luthi. the past principal at Bristol Bay School, and it has been a pleasure to be here. And quite honestly, folks, I don't think I could say anything half as eloquent as what you've already heard.
All right. My name is Luke Fulp. I'll keep it short. I had spoke earlier. I just, one thing that I recognized early on, and some of the folks that are in Juneau today that couldn't make it, we had representatives from Office of Management and Budget, Ledge Finance, myself, and several others. We really felt almost like cut out of the initial conversation. Wait a minute, we're not going to talk about finance. This isn't going to be all about us, And I think it was a really good process, and I think the end result, we have a much better product as a result of just saying we're going to stay out of the weeds on that. We're going to really focus more broadly on what we're doing systemically. And then just a couple shout outs, because this was behind the scenes, and I thought it was a very tall order for committees of 20 people to meet over a series of different teleconferences. And I thought, Bob, you did an exceptional job leading our group. And speaking about some of the things we're talking about today with education, he leveraged technology to conduct voting throughout, thumbs up, thumbs down through a website, and it really helped to move things along, and I appreciate you filling that capacity. And then in addition, Sue Hull, behind the scenes, provided a lot of expertise and a ton of ideas to the process, and I just appreciate just you guys putting so much effort into all this, so thank you.
All right. Thanks, Luke. So I guess that's the end of our report, but as we said in our little work session, that it's probably the beginning of the beginning, right? So, and that's it.